The launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space monkeys blasting off about wallets, user experience, and getting rid of MetaMask. Today we have Jonathan Dunn, aka Nipsey, co-founder of Talisman and head of technology. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. It's nice to be here.
Yes, very nice to have you in here with us. We got some exciting news from Berto at Dotsama Prague about EVM integrations with Talisman. And that can mean a lot of things. So I'm wondering if you can tell us about what that means for Talisman.
You're right. It does mean many things. Integrations is one of them. Essentially, it means that Talisman will support EVM-style accounts in the extension alongside our existing support for kind of the substrate-style signers that we already have. And that also lends us the ability to integrate with a dApp that is constructed to use those EVM accounts. So any dApp that's kind of built for a network like Moonbeam or Moonriver, or on A-Star's implementation of the EVM, or on Akala's implementation of the EVM, which is called EVM Plus. All of these dApps are kind of built with a wallet a little bit like MetaMask in mind. And naturally, that's kind of got a little bit of a different architecture to the substrate wallets like Talisman and Polkadot.js. So we've kind of done some work to be compatible with all of those applications. And the headline kind of this is that you can use any dApp in Dotsama and Talisman because of this work.
Okay, gotcha. So right now, when I want to go and use an application on Moonriver, I need to deal with MetaMask and Talisman. But you're saying that after this is released, it's just one extension and that's going to cover everything.
Yeah, it sounds like a really low bar. But for one ecosystem, you can just use one wallet, which is really lovely now.
And how about people who aren't part of Dotsama at all? Would Talisman be an alternative to MetaMask for them?
Yeah, because the work we've done kind of supports this Ethereum style of accounts and this Ethereum style of applications, it's naturally pretty easy to kind of support all of the networks like Ethereum mainnet, the L2s and sidechains that are kind of part of that broader ecosystem. We were kind of umming and ahhing whether or not that's a good idea. Would it kind of dilute the product offering of Talisman? And we realized that a lot of users are actually coming from these ecosystems into Dotsama. So when you want to bridge your funds from, let's say, Ethereum mainnet to Moonbeam, it is more useful if one wallet supports all of the networks you're kind of having to contend with. So yep, out of the box, we do support kind of Ethereum mainnet, Polygon, and I think a couple of others, which aren't necessarily Dotsama networks, but might be useful for Dotsama users to have in their wallet.
That is amazing. And I kind of remember like many, many months ago, I think in one of your AMAs, the question of EVM compatibility was brought up. And the answer was kind of like, we don't know, we're thinking about it, we're talking about it. What was the journey to getting to where you are now from that place of not really knowing if it was worth it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There was lots of thinking and even more talking internally about this because we could always forecast that there's a lot of work required and it could maybe dilute the product offering of Talisman. We had a pretty tight and tidy substrate wallet at that point in time. And we knew that there would need to be lots of tweaks and lots of changes to build something inside of Talisman which can work with an application that's actually designed to be used with MetaMask. So it was a tricky kind of couple of weeks to navigate, but we kind of realized that there are so many applications in Dotsama that are built on this stack of some Solidity contracts and then deployed on something like Moonbeam, that it would be the most useful thing for the users to be able to kind of use all of that in one wallet. And then these XCM channels with kind of these XC20 assets where you can go from substrate to EVM kind of compounds that and makes the value proposition pretty clear.
Now, you're head of technology at Talisman. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that means.
The answer I give if I'm out socially is I kind of ensure that we don't F up our technology. The Dotsama ecosystem is super nascent. Parachains only came online in December, and all this technology is just emerging as we're building. So there's a lot of different information to kind of internalize and to kind of form into some direction for the wallet so that we ensure that, you know, how we kind of compose accounts in the extension or how we construct how a dApp might integrate with Talisman is kind of in line with what's currently possible but also what's possible in the future. So I spend a lot of time talking to kind of Parachain teams, Parity, and creating little bits of information for the engineering guys to take and build a really excellent wallet.
And was it also up to you to research the EVM wallets that already exist?
Yep. I was probably the most against EVM integration inside of the team because I had all this information about how tricky it could be.
Okay.
But it kind of became apparent that it's such a big win for the user that we're going to try and figure it out and kind of try and navigate all of these tricky UX problems that would arise.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a pretty good job.
Was MetaMask kind of the main inspiration that you guys took from to create this, or were there other wallets that you checked out and really appreciated?
Yeah, inspiration's a strong word. I guess MetaMask provides the best series of like constraints or the best kind of parameters to kind of direct a vision for the product, because that's what most dApps are kind of building for. In that respect, it's probably the wallet we kind of had the closest look at. But I want to give a mention to a wallet called Rabby. We think it's a pretty nice Ethereum wallet. We didn't take too many things from them, but I think it's worth giving them a shout out because I think they're doing a really good job.
So when you were researching these other products, what things did you bring over into the Talisman experience, and what are some things that you changed?
One thing I can probably mention is gas management.
We
kind of took the pattern that users are used to of this kind of low, medium, high, select my gas profile for the transaction that most users are kind of used to. And we've implemented that. It's kind of in a dynamic way so that even when you open the window, it's still polling the gas markets on the network to make sure that you're kind of going to submit a transaction that's not using old information. But one thing that we didn't do is take this really granular kind of fine control over the gas, which something like MetaMask gives you, because that's really confusing. There's like a tip and a mining fee, alter all of these different variables, and they're in funny units. And we decided that's not super necessary in Dotsama at the moment because the gas fees are pretty low, and we can offer just like a seamless kind of ABC user interface for now.
Beautiful. Okay, so when do you think it's going to be in the hands of users? And is there like a gradual rollout process, or is it like, bam, problem solved?
I think it's going to be in the hands of users now because the bam problem solved moment was yesterday. Version 1.5.0 of Talisman was kind of released live on the web store on the 22nd of June.
Great. Thanks for letting me know, guys.
This is what this podcast is for.
Cool. Okay, so what can people do?
A lot. If you're kind of a fresh user to Talisman, if you onboard with your existing seed phrase, or you're kind of allow Talisman to create a seed phrase for you, instead of creating kind of one substrate key pair and saying, hey, here's your first account, we actually generate two key pairs, kind of one substrate and one EVM style key pair straight out of the box. And that will be kind of default for all of the different users.
That's amazing.
But if you're an existing user of Talisman and you want to kind of enable the EVM support, there's a couple of different options. You can import your private key from MetaMask. You can import like a JSON file, which is actually only exported from Talisman. So that might be something for kind of future users if they're migrating between devices.
Wow.
Or you can just create a fresh account inside of the extension. It's a create new account button and it takes a couple seconds.
So those dual accounts that you're talking about, is this going to work for products like a Star? They have the bound accounts, and also Akala has these bound accounts.
So this was one of the trickiest kind of decisions to navigate when we decided to put Ethereum style support inside of Talisman. And that's because there are kind of three Parachain projects that are implementing the EVM, but they've gone about the account kind of composition in three separate ways.
Yes.
Akala have said you can create two kind of completely disassociated key pairs and submit a transaction that binds them. And that's pretty great. It means you can do a lot of stuff from the substrate side. Moonbeam have said, EVM is our thing. It always has been. So we're not going to have substrate accounts at all.
Yeah.
So there's kind of no notion of this binding, or at least for the user.
Right.
And A-Star have kind of said, we're not going to lead one way or the other. There's going to be substrate accounts and they're going to be super functional. And then we're going to have EVM accounts and they're going to be super functional. And there's going to be some functionality that's kind of bridged between these kind of two environments, which is like, again, a different approach to the other parachains. So when we kind of looked at accounts, we said, man, it'd be really useful if inside of Talisman, you can just have account number one. And then underneath that heading, you've just got all of the assets. It's EVM, it's Substrate,
Yes.
it's all the dApps you could possibly use inside of one unified account. But that approach at the moment would kind of, I guess, it would have to be a little biased towards one of the Parachains approaches, and it might not be compatible with all of the applications. So we kind of took the decision to just say, hey, user, here's two separate key pairs. It's possible to kind of send assets between them if you go to particular dApps, but we'll kind of hold off and wait to see if there's some kind of more unification of these standards in the ecosystem before we start thinking about some kind of a non-fictional unified account in Talisman. One thing that we can do pretty easily is just kind of do like a fictional binding in the UI and say, hey, if you guys are treating these two accounts as one, just stick them together in the UI, and that creates a little bit nicer view of the portfolio page. So that's something we could do in the short term, but long term, there might be some more elegant solutions.
This is just one of the tangles you guys are working on in the Dotsama ecosystem. I wonder what else is cooking with Talisman right now. I heard a rumor about light clients. It's becoming a bit of a buzzword here. How is that getting integrated into the product?
Light clients are really exciting. To give kind of an Explain Me Litecoin 5 version of a light client, it essentially allows the user to be their own peer on a peer-to-peer network. It's kind of intuitively a great thing for blockchains because it means I don't have to trust some kind of a provider every time I want to use a dApp and submit a transaction. If I were to use like a traditional banking analogy, it's almost like speaking straight to the mainframe. You know, my transaction goes straight to the kind of the core bit of infrastructure that deals with the transaction instead of going through some middleman. And that's what a light client allows you to do. And in the Dotsama ecosystem, we are super fortunate that Parity have created pretty much the only functioning version of a light client that you can run in the browser. And Talisman have done some work to kind of integrate that into the extension, which will roll out in the next month or so. And we might be giving a demo at Polkadot Decoded. And that's going to kind of be for a couple of networks at the start. And then we can kind of look at evolving that. But essentially, it means that you're not dependent on some kind of RPC provider to use a network like Polkadot or Kusama, which is fantastic because things can go wrong with these RPC providers. We saw earlier this year, Infura, the provider for MetaMask, kind of misconfigured some stuff and it blocked some users in some certain countries. Servers can go down and this kind of thing. And light clients kind of prevent that kind of thing happening and present a more robust kind of bit of infrastructure so that you can always be reliant that blockchain's live, I can use it all of the time, and I'm not dependent on anyone else.
I'm just curious because with all the development you guys have been doing, I would imagine you're sitting at your computer 13, 17 hours a day working. How do you manage all this stuff in this position you have here?
I guess we're really fortunate that Dotsama it's just the best ecosystem, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's like a strong bias towards building things and kind of working on tangible problems in this ecosystem. So we're really lucky to kind of collaborate with a lot of the teams that are just kind of head down, focused on building what they kind of committed to building. So it actually makes it quite a pleasurable experience to be collaborating with all these different teams and keeping up with everything that's happening in the ecosystem. Whilst Talisman are kind of aiming to become the wallet that is easiest to traverse the Paraverse, as we like to say.
Yeah.
It's very much like a team effort. We're kind of spending a lot of time collaborating with all of the Parachain teams, with Parity, with kind of other people that are building different things in the ecosystem, like application builders and different kind of dev shops. And everyone's working towards a common goal of kind of realizing the vision that was laid out, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So we are kind of building a small but important part of this ecosystem, which is the user interface, the bit of software that allows users to kind of just rock up to any dApp and try it out.
Radical. Now, besides the 2 recent events in Europe, you're now in Berlin. You're going to be meeting with hundreds of other Dotsama enthusiasts. You've been presenting on stage a few times?
I did present on stage at the Amsterdot conference, which was organized by HydroDX back in April. Mm-hmm. I might be on stage at Polkadot Decoded. That's still coming up. But yeah, as you mentioned, a lot of the Talisman team, almost all of the Talisman team, are in Berlin for Polkadot Decoded next week. And we're super excited to meet everybody, talk about their projects, talk about our projects, and have some nice time in person because we missed a lot of that during COVID.
Yeah, no doubt. What's your impression of these Dotsama events so far?
I've only been to one in person, and that was Amsterdot back in April, but it was brilliant. Generally, I think there's like a 10 to 20% increase in trust that you gain by just kind of meeting kind of different teams in real life, verifying that everyone's not totally crazy and that you're kind of working on the same types of problems. In Amsterdam, I had a bonding moment with Hoon, the CTO of A-Star. We realized we had a very kind of parallel experience contending with the EVM. Initially, I was really concerned about the problems, about kind of implementing this kind of application environment. Hoon had also kind of had to contend with like the different problems of duct taping that application environment onto their blockchain. And it was a really awesome bonding moment that probably wouldn't have happened if we were in different countries.
Amazing. Also, these Talisman Orbs. On Polkadot.js, we have these identicons, these beautiful dot patterns, but you guys have these absolutely gorgeous orbs. I wonder if there's anything you could tell us about that.
So the original Figma designs in Talisman, instead of having these identicons, had these kind of colorful gradient style identicons, which are still deterministic and they're still unique for different accounts. They just look a little bit different and kind of suit the dark style theme of Talisman a little bit more. So over the past couple of months, we've implemented a first version, like a first pass of these different orbs. And that's now the default in the wallet to kind of serve as like a visual identifier for your accounts instead of the Polkadot.js identicon style dot drawings. You can still toggle back to the dot drawings if that's what you prefer in the settings page. But for now, the default is version 1 of the orbs. But I say version 1 because there's a few things that we can do with these. Currently, the picture that's generated is deterministic just based on your public address. So for each account, it's going to give you like some kind of a visual representation of what that looks like to differentiate it from your other accounts. But what we could do is actually make the image generation deterministic based on something like your transaction history. So as you kind of use your accounts a little bit more and submit more transactions with it and kind of gain a larger portfolio of different assets, we can add maybe different layers of fidelity into these orbs. So at a glance, you can kind of determine how active that account is and kind of work to create a really beautiful picture of your history on Dotsama inside of your account kind of profile, which I think is pretty cool and is like a nice little bit of a playful feature inside of the wallet.
That sounds amazing. Very cool. And that makes me think, how is progress with NFT integrations coming? I mean, you guys already have such a great UI for it, but any developments coming over there?
So NFTs are in the Talisman web app. If you connect any wallet in the ecosystem to the Talisman web app at app.talisman.xyz, you can see your Mark 1 and your Mark 2 NFTs. But it's no secret that we've had quite a few requests to also include this kind of portfolio listing of your NFTs inside of the Talisman wallet extension. And that's certainly on the list. We just had a few items kind of further up the priority list before tackling that one. EVM being front and center. But also things like light clients, some changes to the portfolio page, and in the next couple of months, another 3-letter acronym, XCM. It's kind of no secret to those that are pretty involved in Dotsama that the ecosystem rests pretty heavily on the ability for users to move their assets and send messages between chains. The current user experience or kind of process to do this is to navigate to a dApp which supports a particular XCM channel, as we like to call them. And you can submit the transaction there to bridge, an asset from chain A to chain B. But we've kind of realized, along with a lot of the Parachain teams, that kind of a one-stop shop for all of the token transfers that you can do is a really useful thing for the user. You can kind of rely on going to kind of a single interface and be able to submit almost any of these kind of token transfer XCM channel transactions that are open at the time to be able to move your funds across the ecosystem so that you can use different dApps, gain exposure to different tokens, play a decentralized game that's on another network and all these types of things. So it's going to be pretty useful for the user and for this kind of thing to exist. And we think that the wallet is a great place to do that. Because that's the place where you store your key pairs. It's where you can see portfolio of your assets. And I guess it's the first place that you might look to try and change the locations of those assets. So that's something we're pretty excited about collaborating with some Parachain teams on creating. But it is a bit of a mountain to climb. So we're looking forward to building some things in the next couple of months that moves us closer to that future.
That is so amazing. And it's so cool that you get to spend your days building such an exciting and useful product for our ecosystem. I wonder, do you have any advice you could give to other developers who are just looking to break into the scene of how to find a team that they will find gratifying to work with every day?
I think the first step is to become a user of the ecosystem if you're kind of sincerely interested in Web3. Dotsama is a fantastic kind of playground for you as a builder, because you can use different applications, and more often than not, there's green fields of kind of opportunities to make improvements and develop something pretty novel in this ecosystem. In Dotsama, you're not as bound by kind of the previous patterns and practices as you might be in another ecosystem.
Right.
And it's so kind of early that there's so many opportunities to make an incremental or even large improvement on kind of something like token standards or UIs or, staking arrangements, all these kinds of things. And I guess the discovery for that just starts with being a user of the ecosystem and being sincerely interested in what's being built.
Amazing. Well, I know it's late in Berlin, so I don't want to keep you any longer, but it was an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I just want to thank you so much for all the work you're doing in the ecosystem and working so hard to help this make more sense to people who don't have 3 months to devote to trying to understand what's going on here.
Likewise, Jay. It was awesome being here. And I can say the same about you. I'm an avid listener of So Have You Heard and Space Monkeys. And it's a really good source of information.
Thank you very much. So this was our last animated episode. From here on out, we'll be doing these live. So I hope the next time we get to talk, it'll be face-to-face. And I look forward to that day. Until then, thank you very much for coming in, and talk to you soon.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Have a great day.